I dig it. So, well,
Yeah.
hey, man, thank you for taking a minute. I'm looking forward to getting into the new album and your world of music. So I
Yeah.
appreciate you taking a minute out.
Yeah. Thanks. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you bet. So before we get into the new album, I know that we're all getting kind of tired of talking about COVID, but it was such a big thing for all of us, especially artists. How
Yeah.
did you survive that time period, and how did this new album get influenced by that time period, if it even was influenced by it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, for artists, it was tough for everyone, obviously. Like all of our work just kind of evaporated. I was very fortunate in that I had a pretty substantial private studio of students that I taught, and the majority of them just went to virtual teaching. And so I was able to, keep a lot of my students that way, also help keep sane. And also I ended up writing a book. I did a transcription of Bach's of the Goldberg variations, and I adapted it for saxophone. And so it was just kind of like a thing. I love reading off of scores, specifically violin music. It's like a great workout on saxophone. And I had this piano music of the Goldberg variations, and I read on the first one. I read the first line, I played through it and recorded it, and then I recorded the second line, and I kind of spliced them over the top of each other. And I was like, hey, that sounds pretty cool. Like, I'll do the rest of them. And then I remembered there was like 31 of them or 30 of them. So, but I had all the time in the world. And anyways, I was able to adapt it for various saxophone ensembles. And so I made a book out of it. So that was kind of my COVID project, so to speak. Yeah.
So the new album, Motivity, talk to me a little bit about the artistic forces that went into making this project.
Sure. So kind of dovetailing out of that. So, I was fortunate to get to study with the great Lee Konitz here in New York for a few years, probably between the years of 2013 and 2017 or so. And I used to go to his apartment on the Upper West Side, and we would often grab lunch at the deli on the corner, or the diner rather, and then go up to his apartment and listen to records and talk and play. And it was a really wonderful experience for me, as someone who had listened to Lee for the majority of my musical upbringing. It was pretty surreal, but we lost Lee at the beginning of COVID. He passed away, I believe, in April of 2020. And that kind of really spurred this idea that I had a while ago. One of my favorite records of his was called Motion, recorded in 1961 with drummer Elvin Jones and bassist Sonny Dallas. And they just kind of went into the studio and just recorded some standards playing off the cuff. And just the spontaneity and the brilliance of Lee and the ensemble really stuck with me. And so I always knew I kind of wanted to do like an homage to Lee in that record. And then after Lee passed in 2020 from COVID, it kind of spurred that motivation to try and make that happen. And then thankfully, with the generosity of the Chamber Music of America, the Howard Gilman Foundation, I was able to get a grant to bring that project to reality, basically. And that's how we ended up with Motivity. Yeah.
So what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
I wanted to try and keep the spirit of Motion, of just very, very little planning. I had a couple of originals of mine that were, there's a lot of Easter eggs, so to speak, on the album, of like little nods to Lee and here and there. But really, I just want the listener to be able to hear the freeness and the spirit of just the joy of improvising, of just going in and playing some of these well-known standards that we all know, but maybe in a different way, and just kind of appreciate Lee and his spirit and everything that he brought to this music.
So take me back to the beginnings of your journey into music, and more specifically jazz. Where were you born and raised, and how did this journey begin for you?
Sure. So I was actually born in New York. I was born on Long Island, and I grew up there for about 12 years, and then my family relocated to Florida, and I finished growing up in Tarpon Springs, Florida. And I had a really wonderful high school program, the Tarpon Springs Leadership and Music Conservatory, that really kind of fostered my love of music and really helped encourage me. So I had a lot of really wonderful opportunities there. And my studies continued into the University of North Florida for undergraduate. I got to study with the great saxophonist Bunky, who was my first real mentor. who really opened my ears to a lot of things. Bunky was also a teacher of like the great Greg Osby and Steve Coleman. And, so Bunky has a very specific way of dealing with music and harmony. And I was really fortunate to have that at that period of time. I did 2 years with him. I transferred to the New England Conservatory of Music up in Boston, where I got to study with another great saxophone mentor, George Garzone, who equally had a huge influence on me at that point in time. And then I moved to New York and did my graduate studies at the Manhattan School of Music, where I continued with George and got to study with Steve Wilson and drummer John Riley, amongst others. So, yeah.
Oh, you've had amazing teachers. So what was the first live show that you saw that blew you away?
Wow. I mean, that's hard to really remember. I think it must have been when I was in Tarpon Springs and it was at the Clearwater Jazz Festival. And I remember seeing, there was a couple shows. I remember seeing Chick Corea and I remember seeing Branford Marsalis's quartet. And I just remember watching those and just being enamored with, what they were doing and seeing what was possible with music. And it really kind of, set me in that direction.
So you've had some amazing teachers, but who were some early influences that influenced the way that you approach your instrument?
I was trained classically, actually. So I studied primarily classical saxophone up until about my junior year in high school. I had been playing in jazz groups and whatnot, but I hadn't actually fully and wholeheartedly committed to studying jazz until about that time. And so I think a lot of my technical foundation is kind of rooted in some of those more traditional studies. But then once I got into it, I mean, some of my earliest influences, I would have to say Sonny Stitt, Cannonball Adderley, Charlie Parker. I just really loved all of those. And then for a lot of the more modern people, when you're younger, I feel like it's easier to gravitate. I loved Mark Turner and Chris Potter and, all of those players as well. So, those are some of my earliest influences, I would say.
So what have you learned over the years, whether the legends and luminaries have taught you or you played with them? What have you learned from them that you in turn give to younger players that you're around now?
I think some of the most important lessons that I've learned from my mentors, from Bunky and from George, especially, is the ability to self-teach. They were the types of teachers that didn't just throw a bunch of pieces of sheet music in front of me to like memorize these lines or blah, 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 but they were more so guides. And so a lot of the learning came from me. And so I had to be very proactive with the work that I was doing. And they were just there as kind of guide rails to kind of keep things in check. But I think, they were both so joyful with their approach to music. And, one of Bunky's lines that he told me that I carry with me today, he says, no matter what you do in music, try and find the beauty in everything that you do. And I think that really holds true because that essentially, distills the spirit of the music, of what's really important, the beauty of the music and connecting to people. And so these small tidbits, along with the work ethic that I developed and just the ability to, self-critique and self-analyze and self-teach, I think has been instrumental in the way that I've been able to develop as a musician. And I really try and pass that on to my students as well.
So what do you like the best about being a professional musician? What gets you up every day? What motivates you every day?
I mean, it's a hard career path for sure, and so the longer I'm in it, the opportunities might get better, but it doesn't necessarily get easier, and, but for me, I love playing the saxophone and I love playing creative improvised music and the ability to, I love playing other people's music and being able to give whatever part I can give to and to help bring other people's musical visions to life. I love that challenge and I love that ability to share those experiences with other people. And then just for myself to have an outlet, a creative outlet for myself that I can express myself, that sometimes where words can't really carry me, I have this whole other way of doing it that oftentimes takes precedence for me. And so I'm very grateful for to have that and to have these experiences with other people. And I'm just very fortunate to be able to do that. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, why do you love jazz?
I mean, it's a form of self-expression, um, and it's a form of discipline, and it's a craft, and it's also a community, you know. And I think uh, to feel like I'm a part of this larger community of incredible artists and thinkers and musicians that have come before me, and to try and do everything that I can to, uh, you know, pay respect to the amount of joy and love that it's brought to my life. Um, you know, that all of these incredible Black artists in the Black community has like really brought purpose to my life to be able to play this music with humility and love. And I'm reminded of it every day, that I'm very grateful. But I love being a part of this community. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, Alex, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, students, fans, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Uh, I'm just a guy trying to play music a little bit better every day, you know, just trying to push myself and not become stagnant or kind of fall behind. You know, it's a very solitary line of work. You know, obviously we're playing with other musicians and whatnot in that aspect, but in terms of our self-study and our diligence to get better at our craft, it can be a very lonely path. And so I find that I feel most fulfilled when I am continually working on my craft and doing things to make myself better, to become a better musician and a better person. And so, yeah, that's how I think of myself. I'm just a guy trying to get better. That's all, you know.
I dig it. So Motivity is the latest album. If anyone wants to pick up a copy in the right way, other than streaming, or see you live, any of the good business, previous work, where do they go?
Yes, they can go to my Bandcamp. I have CDs and LPs available as well. So they can purchase direct through me. I'll also be posting some links on my social media on Instagram, Facebook, and whatnot, of other places to get it, Amazon, some larger stores as well. So, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Alex, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for talking about your career and the latest album. I appreciate it. Best of luck.
Of course. Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate you.
You bet.